All right, welcome back, YouTube. We are doing the CP3 pump in this LLY Duramax diesel. Now, as you can see, I've already replaced the fuel hoses. I've already rebuilt my head. I've got basically a cranks but no start condition. My fuel pressure is at 200. Based on that and talking to some guys I know that are really into these diesels, I'm more of a gas person, but I own one, so I gotta fix it. I already had replaced the injectors because I had two of them that were failing, and I went ahead and did them all so that they would all be at the same rate. Honestly, not really a hard job. I went through the wheel wells for most of them and had to remove a lot of this stuff. When it rains, it pours on me some days, so I'm going to have to tear basically all of this out. As you can hear, that glucking noise is the antifreeze pouring out. Down at the bottom of the passenger side, there is a drain cock that you can get to. I don't recommend breaking this off right away unless you have a huge pan, because it sprays everywhere. So I'm just, while I'm doing other things, I'm letting this slowly drain out. I've already removed my intake to here, my expansion. I know a lot of these refer to it as a resonator, that the unit up there, which is actually this unit, is a reservoir for extra air. So when you're at wide open throttle and it's not pulling enough air, it has an extra little volume of air it can pull from so that it doesn't have a hesitation. Could be right, could be wrong, I'm not sure. But normally resonators have some kind of sound baffling in them. This is just a big open chamber, so I think it's more apt that it's that. All right, so first things we need to do, we need to disconnect both batteries. Then we need to remove the air conditioner. We need to remove the alternator, the belt, intake tube that's above your EGR. Mine has not had the EGR delete done to it. It is still what's considered legal. This is basically almost a completely bone stock engine. Again, the only real modifications that were done to it were recently to replace the hoses here, because the replacement hoses are $120 a piece through GM. So I went ahead and got a master kit, which gave me all the seals for inside of this, and then gave me the new hose for over here. As I take stuff off, I'll show you quick reviews on it. That way you're not watching a video of me taking off bolts. I'd assume if you're watching YouTube, you already know how to take a bolt off. All right, I'm about half an hour into it. Got the air conditioner off. That's pretty easy. Disconnect it from this. You can flip it over here once you've removed the connector for the clutch engagement and for the pressure switch. I got the alternator removed. That's basically a bolt here, and then you have your electrical connection on the back and a plug. These little zip tie connectors, I actually like their quality. Plus, as you can see right here, if you push down on that, you can disconnect them and reconnect them. Same with the one that's holding over here for the FICM, or the fuel basically control unit. Next, I will be, since my antifreeze has stopped draining down there, I will be pulling off the upper antifreeze hose tube, which has a connection here. And it is easiest not to try to unscrew this, but to actually just squeeze that with a pair of needle nose pliers to get that off, and then to take off the thermostat housing. The thermostat housing is just held in by 4 bolts, well, 5 maybe, and that will come up and out of your way. After that, I will be removing this, and then I will be removing the turbo inlet feed, making my way down to the bridge. When I get there, I will give you another review on what I've done so far. Okay, at this point, I've gotten EGR recirculation valve tube, which also goes to the intercooler feed off of the upper part of the bridge. I've got my thermostats out. These are actually new thermostats, so no need to replace them now. But if you haven't replaced them in a while, now is definitely the time. Over here, I have gotten access for my turbo inlet is now off. This is a good time to just spin your turbo and check for any up and down play. Mine's still pretty good. I don't really feel anything, maybe just a hair, but no movement, and I don't see any scraping, so that's good. To get your coolant tube off, the upper radiator hose and coolant tube off, it's a little on the difficult side because of these plugs. These plugs actually are held in place by a bracket, and you need to remove a bolt in the back and then a bolt down here, and then it'll pry out of the way to get to the bolt that's underneath this bracket for the actual, it goes to these two. There's one in the front, one in the rear, and to get that you have to kind of move that out of the way. So these electrical connections are pretty easy to get off. Basically, as they're pushed into place, they snap over, and to get them unlocked, there's two tabs, one on this side, one on that side. You squeeze those together, you bend that over, well, you squeeze those together, and you'll move this part over, which pushes the connection out. Okay, next we'll be working on gaining better access to the actual CP3 pump. You're gonna have to disconnect a whole bunch of stuff. This is for the thermostat housing. It goes over here. You have a pressure sensor that goes into your intake manifold right here. These are very easy to break. What I would do is I would spray some of this down with like penetrating oil or something to that effect. And then when you take off the 10mm bolt and the switch, kind of wiggle it back and forth until you get it out of your way. The next part we'll be working on is getting all of this stuff out of the way. This should just be held in by a O-ring, so I should be able to wiggle that once I get some of the wiring up and out of the way. And at this point, you're also going to want to disconnect your rail feed lines. There's one here, and then there is one over here. You'll have to gain access to that. You might be able to get it through here with an open-end wrench. If not, you might have to remove some stuff. I'll let you know. It's going pretty smoothly at this point. Right now I'm about maybe 15 minutes into it. Also at this stage, you're gonna wanna, when you remove your inlet, the inlet actually has a PCV draw in it that goes over to each side of the engine, and it's got a little clamp right there. All I did with that is remove the two 10mm. There's one over there. And then there is one right back there. Pretty easy to get to. They're just held in by O-rings that slide right out. Now getting all the wiring out of the way takes a little bit of time and patience. At this point, this is when the job starts to take a little bit longer than, you know, most people would say it does. You don't want to break any of your connectors. You got one down there, you've got a couple here, you've got ones up here, and they're all held on by these little tiny brackets. And then of course you have all these fuel lines. You have the one that looks like goes down to your power steering, but don't hold me to that one. And then you've got to get some lines out of your way. You have one here that goes to your CP3. I got my bridge feed pulled out. That is right here. I've seen a couple of these watching other YouTube videos that were pretty rancid inside. And compared to those, mine really doesn't look that bad. But because I'm here, what I'm gonna do is pop off the O-rings, because I got new ones for that anyway. And I'm gonna dip this in a carburetor cleaner jug that I got from AutoZone to get all that nice and softened up so that I can just basically scrub it right out. And I'll be doing that with the bridge too. No reason to leave that crap in there. I've removed the return line that goes to your CP3, and I disconnected it from right over here. And just basically, there's one right back here. It's a 10mm that holds it, and I disconnected it from the return line to the tank using one of these little gadgets that literally just help to unlock the fuel line. And what I'm in the process doing now is removing the bridge. And the front bolt's very, very easy to get to. The rear's a little bit harder. So what I'm using is a 1/4 inch swivel 10mm using a really strong fine line tape. Electrical tape will work too, to hold the socket onto this, because this is not a locking extension, so I don't want to lose it down there until I get the bolts all out. If a bolt falls after, I can probably get it down through here, but if I can't, I want to make sure that I can at least get to it. See how that'll go on there and break that free. I can do it over there, and then I should be able to get down to the bottom ones this way too. So that's the next step. All right, so I've kind of hit the wall. I started this at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's a very cold morning, and then it started raining on me. When it rains, it pours. Basically, I've gotten it to this point where I've gotten this loosened up, and then which goes over to the test port here. I've loosened up this line, which is the main feed from the FICM. I've gotten all my bolts out. This is the toughest part of this job so far. Now, I have seen videos online where you take this little controller off, and it does give you enough space to get it out, but mine's pretty dirty on the inside, so I want to get this cleaned up, and I don't feel like dealing with this if it doesn't go on properly, not to mention the warranty aspects of it. I'd much rather have that stay on, because the new Bosch pump that's over here has the regulator and everything's already built onto it. This isn't a reman, this is actually a brand new pump from Bosch. Cost around, I think, 850 bucks, but dealing with new parts as opposed to remanufactured parts, after talking to a couple of guys that I know that are really into this, because mine's not modified in any way, doesn't even have a tuner on it, they said stock was the way to go. It got so many miles out of the original one, let's go ahead and keep it stock. That's not saying that anything's wrong with the aftermarket pumps. For my application, it's just no reason to. Next, we'll continue to figure out how to get this this little bugger comes out. Again, we have a coolant line right here that feeds over to down into there, and it's just being a pain in the butt to get it past there. Once I get that done, I'll give you another update. Got my bridge off. Turned out all I needed to do after loosening this up to get me a little space is just pry up on this just a little bit. So that's what I did, and it pulled right out. I went ahead and wiped down everything, wiped down the inside of this with some wax and grease remover. Now the next step is to remove the 4 bolts on the front down by the water pump that hold the CP3 in place, and hopefully I'll be able to move it back just enough to get it out. So I think that's going to involve loosening up this, taking the FICM off, and then taking this line off, removing this line from the FICM all the way over to, if I remember right, goes to the fuel pressure. Sorry, right from the tank, but I'll have to verify that. I've got to remove a 10 millimeter there and remove this feed line for the rail system that goes over to the other side. Once I finish that, I will give you another update. Whole bunch of work later. I have my CP3 out. I had to pry on it a little bit to get it out. It actually sits in there like this. There are 4 bolts holding it in place. At this point, figure out what things need to be changed over. Now it looks like the bracketing that holds this to the actual block needs to be changed, and we've got a gear that needs to be changed. And what I also want to do is pull off my fuel pressure regulator and see if there's any metal filings in it. From what I read online, that's like a telltale sign that you have a problem, and if that's the case, I'm going to pull off my fuel pressure regulator. There's 3 T30 Torx holding it in place, and I want to check that. And what I'm checking it for is metal filings from inside this pump assembly. If that is the case, then basically I most likely have to tear the rest of the fuel system apart and get it all cleaned up. I have a sonic tank that I can do that in, but you can do it with brake clean or carburetor cleaner. You want to make sure if it's carb cleaner that you don't get any on seals. That's what I'm going to look at first, and then also what you want to look for is any types of rust inside of your feed lines, pressure feed line. If there's rust inside there, most likely this is a complete waste of time even trying to have this sent out and rebuilt. But I went with a new one, so I don't have to worry about that. But I'm still gonna check it out anyway. CP3 pumps installed. 4 bolts are tight. Started to put my lines back on, but I wanted to show you this. This is your bridge, and you'll notice that I've gotten it really clean inside. I figured it ran really well when it was stock and nice and clean, so I'd get it just as clean inside and out. Of course, it's killing me that I didn't take off my turbo and the other manifolds to get them just as clean, but hey, I only have so much time and it's freaking freezing out here. I want to get this thing back together so I can start using it again. If I come across any other things, oh yeah, the reason why I pulled this video up. Again, I showed you that I use this little 1/4-inch swivel, but I've seen on some of the videos where they take a paper towel in there to hold the nuts on when you're putting them way the hell behind the turbo down there at the bottom of the bridge. I don't do it that way. What I actually do is I fill this full of silicone. It holds the nuts, hold them just fine, and you'll learn really quickly that trying to get these into position and on, because of like this tube, this one wasn't that bad, but because of this tube it was a real pain in the butt. The silicone I found holds a lot better than the paper towel trick. I'll pull it back up if I have any other tidbits of advice. And here's the other pipe. As you can see, I got it really nice and clean down inside of there so that I don't have to worry about any of that crap breaking off and going into my intake manifold. Alright, so now that I've gotten it pretty much back together, I gotta reconnect my batteries. Wasn't too bad. Put a new belt on it. Got certain areas of it like that all cleaned up and looking new. Everything seemed to go together pretty easily. I wouldn't say that there was anything that jumped out at me like, hey, you guys really want to look at this. It went back pretty much the way it came apart, which was nice. Normally it's not like that. So now what I'm working on is I will be pumping up the system, trying to get all the air out of it, adding the antifreeze, and then we'll go with the computer to see where my pressures are at. Hopefully they're up where they need to be. Pumped up the fuel pressure bleed off to get the air out of it, but I probably didn't get all of it out, so it might take a while to start. Right now I just wanted to see if I have anything. Helps if you turn the key on. Fuel data. I'm still showing only 200, and it wants 6,000. So let's see what happens after I crank it for a bit. Nothing. So back to the drawing board. My actual fuel pressure and my desired are pretty much right in line with one another, which is awesome, because again, when you first cranked it up and it didn't start, it scared the hell out of me. I was like, oh good God. Yep, looks like my numbers are going right where they need to be. And that's replacing a CP3 pump and double checking to make sure it's doing its job when you're done. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit that like and subscribe button, and any comments, I'll do my best to answer. You have a great day.